Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 9, Episode 1, The Butter Shave. Hello everyone. I hope everyone's doing well out there. It's so good to be back. I took a couple of weeks off. A few things I was doing. I did the favorite Elaine moments video for Season 8, and that was I'm not going to lie, it was a little bit of a slog this time. I wasn't kind of in the right mindset for a few days. I had organized it. I made my list. I even put together like this really rough, like I take little videos of my TV of like the moments I want to reenact. And I did all of that. And then for some reason, I just wasn't very motivated to act it all out. But that all being said, I think it turned out really fun. And I'm also glad that I took Greg's suggestion of Greg Sack Lunch. He said, you have to do a Molly Shannon impression in there. So it's like, as I went on the last episode, just how much I loved Molly Shannon's performance as Sam, the coworker who does not swing her arms. I was like, yeah, I need to do something. I was like, we never really get to see her leave that message. We hear the message. So that was really fun. So if you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend you follow the podcast on social media and you can see the favorite Elaine moments. You can see all of them. They're all on each of my social media sites for Hot and Heavy. So I would love it if you would follow me and enjoy those videos. They're just meant to be a stupid, fun time and nothing more. Other than that, I've started rehearsals for this amazing show I'm doing at the Denver Art Museum. It is to be performed in front of the classes that come for field trips. That's going to be starting in October. And so this month is full of rehearsals for a show. It's in conjunction with the museum's exhibition of Maurice Sendak, who is the author and illustrator of Where the Wild Things Are. And so this show is meant to be fun, but also educational. And I will admit, I've been learning a lot about Maurice Sendak throughout the process. But anyway, it's a really fun show. It's been wonderful to get to know my castmates and just being in that museum. That's where we are rehearsing, of course, where we're going to be performing it. But the Denver Art Museum is so beautiful. All art museums are beautiful. They're so calming. I always try to go to an art museum, whatever city I am visiting. It's just like, and I'm not even, I know that makes me sound kind of highfalutin or whatever. I'm not that arty. I just like the vibe of an art museum. They're just peaceful. They kind of calm me down. Okay, let's get into this episode. The synopsis for the butter shave is as follows. Kramer's new habit of applying butter to his face after shaving leads to problems with a hungry Newman. After shaving? I thought he was shaving with the butter. Ugh, these synopses, man. I know I complain about them all the time, so I'm just going to move on. A playground equipment company hires George because it's thought he's disabled. Elaine and Puddy's vacation puts their relationship on a roller coaster ride, while Jerry is offended that Banya is riding his coattails to NBC success. This episode was written by Alec Berg, Jeff Schaefer, and David Mandel. We start out in Monk's. Jerry and George are at a booth. We hear George say, "What is Holland?" And George reveals his face from behind a newspaper to have a mustache. We pan to Jerry and he has one too. And they just sort of get into it about the difference between Holland, the Netherlands, and who are the Dutch. Jerry says how he cannot stand the mustache, and same with George. He feels like an out-of-work porn star. Well, apparently they grew them because George said it would be like taking a vacation from themselves. Then he suggests other things they could maybe grow on their face or do as an escape, like parachute pants. Finally, Jerry just tells him that you need to get a job. Damn it. Next, we are at the comedy club. Jerry's at the bar and George enters. He's not using crutches anymore. He is using a cane. So just a reminder, at the end of season 8, the Summer of George episode is where he injures himself when he slips on the glossy invitations. And we're meant to believe he might not even walk again, but he had to just, really work hard at it. So he's on to what looks like the last step, just a cane. Kind of like Mr. Peanut, Neil. He's kind of kneeling it up here. I think we need to acknowledge that. But too bad Neil and Danielle are in, Switzerland or London or England, somewhere, so he can recover from his crepe burns. Anyway, George explains that, crutches are a funny story and a cane is a sad story. Jerry tells him that these NBC guys saw his set and he might have another shot at a pilot. Oh, right, George says, we're back. We? No. We hear Kenny Banya get outroed off stage and he comes back saying how he killed Jerry. He killed. Killed? Killed. I'm going to go pick up some chicks. Good looking ones, too. He exits while saying, hey, what's your name? Jerry tells George he only killed because of Jerry's stellar set. He's like the fish that attaches himself to the shark. Jerry's the shark and he's the fish eating his laughs. George really doesn't get it. I really don't know how a fish could eat laughs. I'm glad I brought it up. Next, we're in Jerry's apartment. Kramer enters with his mustache. He asks if Jerry has any shredded coconut. Jerry motions to his face, we're not doing that. Yeah, so Kramer exits. George is on the phone doing what? The task that everyone does in 90s sitcoms. He's checking his messages from Jerry's phone. And apparently he got a job interview in the afternoon. Oh, it's beautiful. It's in sports. Knicks, Rangers, playground equipment. Welcome back to the show, Jerry says. Kramer re-enters without his mustache. Oh yeah, this is better. You have any shredded coconut? No, Jerry says. George exits. He says he's got a hobble. Kramer puts on his aftershave and it just hurts so bad. He tells Jerry he has to switch shaving creams. He's getting no protection. Well, what do you use? Whatever you get. Jerry shows him a postcard from Elaine from Europe. Oh, don't tell me she's dragging another boyfriend across Europe. Remember David Puddy? Oh, the face painting auto mechanic. She's dating him again. I guess she's batted around and she's back at the top of the order. I appreciate that so much. I'm not even a baseball person, but I just thought that was so funny. Such a funny way to put it. Ooh, a month in Europe with Elaine. That guy's coming home in a body bag, Kramer says. Next, we are, with Elaine. She's in a cab with Puddy. They're on their way to the airport in Oslo, Norway. Puddy is going through all the currency and he's just fascinated. And we see Elaine. I mean, you can just tell with her face. She's so irritated. He's going through each coin. Finally, she tells him that they have to break up. She can't listen to him say how interesting he thinks the change with the hole in it is. And if you tell me what time it is back in New York, you're going home in a body bag, mister. Well, Puddy claps back with her annoying habits. Well, what do you think the Gap in Rome has? It's not in the Gap in Broadway. You know what? Forget about the Gap, she says. We're through. Fine. The driver announces that they've arrived at Seminole 3. Have a nice flight. My take. So we start out our final season for Elaine with a bang. I love this scene. The face acting alone leading up to her outburst at Puddy is fantastic. And we can see there's so much being said with that face acting. We know how this trip has gone. Like she is at her wit's end. We are entering into this trip at her just wanting to, like she says, murder him, basically. And it's nice. We do get a little setup from Kramer in the previous scene. Oh God, going to Europe with Elaine. That's not going to be easy for anybody. So it's a perfect transition to seeing this little car trip, this little cab ride. Oh my gosh. And the Gap in Rome thing, it to me is so funny. It's like the ultimate definition of being that American anywhere else, like, oh, let's go to the Gap because I know what it is. It's so brilliant to display. Like, okay, Elaine, you're not perfect here either. You're doing that classic, like, stupid American thing where it's like, well, I got to do what's familiar to me. Yeah, I guess I came to this country to kind of see it, but let me go to the Gap. And I also like how what Puddy is doing, it's not over the top. It's pretty innocent. He just likes looking at the coins. I mean, even something just that mild. It's not something that's like universally annoying or anything, but that's enough for Elaine's temperament. It's just a fantastic setup. This scene is so great. Next, we're on the plane. Elaine and Puddy are in their seats, and we hear the pilot say that the flight with the layovers will be, I think, like 22 hours. Puddy starts sobbing next to her. He's not taking the breakup very well. And she yells to the flight attendant, "You gonna bust out that drink card or what?" My take, it's a short scene, but it gets us on the plane, and we know that it's going to be a long flight. Poor Elaine has the middle seat. I think she was also in the middle seat in that episode where Jerry gets first class. It's really the perfect misery setting. You're going to be on a plane, and you're going to be on the middle seat. And Puddy starting to sob is really funny too. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. Kramer enters. He asks Jerry if he saw Banya's set last night because I read on the internet he killed. Ugh, Jerry tells him the same thing he told George. He only killed because I killed first. He's a time slot hit. Kramer says he has to give him some credit. Don't be so ridiculous. And he's saying this as he's rubbing a stick of butter on his face. He goes to leave and Jerry's like, wait. What? Do I have to ask? Well, I ran out of butter, so I had to borrow yours. Anything else, Mr. Nosy? Why are you buttering your face? I'm shaving with it. Oh, Moses, smell the roses. He tells Jerry all the benefits, and he says to feel his face. That's so soft. Jerry keeps refusing, finally takes bread and wipes it on his face. Oh, that is close. And Kramer takes the buttered face bread and eats it on his way out. Next, we are at George's interview. He got the job and he's so surprised. And the manager tells George, well, everyone's been so impressed with him and that he must be used to hearing that. Well, no, George says. He tells him, there will be no discrimination due to his handicap. Oh, I'm not handicapped, George says. Oh, sorry. The manager thinks he made a faux pas there. He says, differently advantaged. George tries to explain, but then he gets interrupted with the news that he will also have his own private bathroom. When can I start? Whenever you feel you're able. Then he offers to help George out of his chair. All right. Next, we are at Monk's. George is telling Jerry about the new job. He says, they think I'm handicapped. Anyway, they gave me this incredible office. Hold on, Jerry says. They think you're handicapped? Yeah, because of the cane. You should see the bathroom they gave me. Jerry's like, how can you do this? He's so appalled. And George argues he's always been handicapped, but he's just now getting the recognition for it. Name one thing I have that's an advantage. There's a guy at the Yankees with no arms. Apparently this guy got more work done, made more money. He had a wife and a family. He drove a better car. He drove a car with no arms. All right, I made up the car part, but the rest is true. And they hated me anyway. Jerry cannot believe this. You know how hard it is just telling people I know you? George is fixated on the bathroom. It's got that high toilet with the raised seat. I feel like a gargoyle. Kramer approaches with a tub of butter. They hooked me up. He says how his face feels so good, he's going to use it all over his body. And he exits. Banya enters with Jenna. Who? Toothbrush in the toilet bowl. They come over and Banya does the introductions. Pretty good looking, huh? Jenna tells him how, I dated Jerry before you. Oh, this is awkward. Don't worry, Kenny, she says. After dating Jerry, you're a pleasure. And then they exit. Jerry can't believe it. Now he's riding his coattails again. First laughs now, ladies. George just thinks that Jerry misses Jenna. Next, we're back on the plane. Puddy is having a heart-to-heart with the flight attendant. Says he ultimately blames himself. He knew what he was getting into. She's a bitter, unstable person. I mean, the sex was good. I'm sure it was fine for her, but I need more, he says. Elaine elbows the guy next to her. You believe in this? Excuse me, I was sleeping, he says. Well, you missed quite a performance, she says, and takes a sip. That's my apple juice. My take, really funny setup here. I love hearing Puddy talking shit about Elaine loud enough for her to hear. And then her waking up that guy next to her and the delivery of him saying, excuse me, I was sleeping. So it makes me laugh every time. And then that's my apple juice. Oh my gosh. Elaine just has no social skills whatsoever. I wanted to point out, this storyline with Elaine, and I'll just say it now, it was in the extras, but basically we have her sort of separate from everyone else because they had to schedule these shoots for JLD at an earlier date, or I think a later date than everyone else because of her maternity leave. She had given birth over the break, but she was still technically on maternity leave. So they needed to kind of have this separate storyline so that everyone else could film without her. And also probably the reason that she's sitting for most of this, she's sort of physically static. And I just wanted to point out how that's not an easy thing to pull off, to just have these scenes where like no one's really moving that much. Everyone's just kind of sitting and delivering their lines. But with the brilliance of the actors here and the writing, it really works. And I just wanted to kind of give kudos to all of these actors who had to do this because it's definitely not easy. JLD has to do a lot with her face, a lot with the upper half of her body. I have been waiting 150 episodes to tell this story. I have a story of a personal connection to Mr. Vegetable Lasagna. His name is Frank Van Keeken, and he is, in fact, from the Netherlands. He is a Dutch actor who I had the fortune of, let me just get into it. I did meet him. So this goes back many years, over probably 15 years ago now. Back when we lived in Michigan, we would make frequent trips to Canada. You know, Toronto was a destination for a nice long weekend or just a little bit of a getaway. But also we had friends that resided in St. Mary's, Ontario, which was not too far from Stratford, Ontario. For those of you who are familiar, Stratford, Ontario is a pretty prolific theater town. They have multiple theaters. People come from all over. It's like a whole thing. Stratford, Ontario. Look it up. Anyway, so we were there visiting friends one weekend, and we went to this restaurant, the restaurant we always went to because we loved it. It was called Pozzo. And we were sitting at this table, and I'm looking over at this guy a few tables over, and he has the exact same face. I'm really good, and like brag alert, but I am so good at recognizing people. Like I'm the person that's like, oh, they were in like one episode of Highway to Heaven. Like I don't know what it is. I have good face recognition. So anyway, I knew it. Like he had put on a few pounds, no offense, Vegetable Lasagna, but he had put on a few pounds. I mean, this was like many, many years later. And anyway, I was just like, I think that's Vegetable Lasagna. My husband doesn't have the talent I have. He's like, I don't think so. It doesn't look, I don't know. I mean, kind of looks like him. I'm like, no, I know for a fact it is Vegetable Lasagna. But during that visit, I chickened out. I did not approach him. I mean, we're in a restaurant. He's at a table with what I'm assuming maybe his wife or partner or something. I don't approach him. And I regret it for months and months. I'm like, God damn it. I should have, I'll never know now. I will never know. The next time we were visiting, and like I said, we would go quite often. We had very good friends there, and we would, it was a 2-hour drive. So we're like, hey, we're just going to come and hang out for the weekend and eat at Pozzo because we freaking love it. Back in the same setting. I'm not kidding. Same setting, almost the same table. I look over and I'm like, holy shit, it's him. My husband's like, well, you've been regretting not approaching him last time. You better not do that again. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. So I get up. I go to him and I said, I'm so sorry. I don't want to interrupt you, but are you Vegetable Lasagna? And this smile spreads across his face and he says, yes, I am. And it was like I had no control over the volume of my voice. I shout across the restaurant, it's Vegetable Lasagna! Like I'm pointing at him. Oh my God. Everyone's like looking at me, what the hell? Again, for anyone who has no idea, which was probably 99% of the people in that restaurant, like not knowing the reference to Seinfeld, they're like, why is she so excited about this dish? Do they serve vegetable lasagna here? Which they didn't, by the way. Anyway, he was so nice. I was like, I'm so sorry. I bumbled through the story of how I had seen him months ago and I didn't have the courage to ask him. And we're actually from Detroit, but we're not from here. So like, I can't believe the odds of me seeing you again, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm just totally rambling. He was such a nice person. He took a little bit of time and I just said, I'm a huge Seinfeld fan. I recognized you. I don't want to bother you. But he was just like, oh, it's not a problem. He was there. He was cast in one of the theater productions that was in town. And so that's why he'd been there for months. And, he's doing this run of the show. And oh my gosh, he was just really gracious. I think he was kind of tickled that someone recognized him and was so excited. Anyway, he said that he had a great experience on Seinfeld. This was a while ago now, but I do remember him saying that. He said that Julie Louis-Dreyfus was such a pleasure to work with. She was so supportive. He felt very, very welcomed. And yeah, all around, it was just a fantastic experience. And that also, I believe it was for the finale. I want to say that he was brought back. It never made the cut of the episode, but he was brought back later in the season. It might have been for the finale to do another scene with Julia. Basically, like she gets on a flight for something and Oh God, I should have researched this. It must be, I don't think it's for the finale, but for whatever it was, he said, yeah, they actually brought me back because they wanted to bring like a little reunion with vegetable lasagna and Elaine. But anyway, he said that it was just such a fun experience and he had a great time. And thank you, for coming over and saying hi. Anyway, I've been waiting for so long to tell that story. And I still cannot believe I got a second chance to approach vegetable lasagna. And he's doing really well. I was going through his IMDb and apparently he has created some show, like a really successful show. He's behind the scenes. He's not acting in it, but he's one of the creators of one of the most successful like teen shows overseas. And like, it's like 200 episodes now, like very, very cool. I did also see he got some Canadian acting awards for theater. So whatever he was in at Stratford was probably very well done. Anyway, Frank Van Keeken, vegetable lasagna. There it is. My own personal anecdote. Hopefully not the closest I get to a Seinfeld actor. I'm just putting it out there. One day I'm going to work with JLD. It's going to happen. It's going to happen, people. You guys can help by just putting out those vibes. Okay, moving on. We see next a work montage for George at Play Now. We hear again Morning Train by Sheena Easton. They used this last time with Kramer when he was working at Brant Leland. So George is on one of those automated stair conveyor things getting carried up. He's also getting carried by a coworker down the hall. He also gets caught, though, in his office using his cane as a sword, but then he acts like he's fallen down, and the coworker comes over to see if he's okay. The cane is also for comedy. He trips a coworker with it, but everyone just laughs, including the guy who got tripped. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. Jerry enters sniffing. Someone's cooking. Newman tries to just kind of butter up Jerry, pun intended, but Jerry knows what he's doing. I'm not the one cooking, Newman. Damn you, Seinfeld, you useless pustule. He asks if it's Kramer. He's like, no, he's on the roof getting some sun with the butter. Oh no, he has this realization. That's what they're smelling. Newman's ears perk up. Butter? And he follows Jerry. Next, we're back on the plane. Elaine and vegetable lasagna are getting cozy, and he's explaining all the Kroners to her. Oh, she says, my last boyfriend had a real Kroner comprehension problem, if you know what I mean. A real cement head. Saying this loud enough for him to hear, but when she looks over, Puddy is busy laughing with a beautiful woman across the aisle. And she says, David, you're so funny. I know. Elaine hits him. What are you doing? It's a long flight, Elaine. I had to get on with my life. Oh, with some floozy across the aisle? Yeah, that's right, he says. Well, what's going on with you and a vegetable lasagna? Oh, him? He's an idiot. He doesn't mean anything to me. I can hear you, he says. Puddy says, well, if it were up to him, they'd still be together. Well, maybe I feel the same way, Elaine says. Yeah? So now what? Let's make out, Puddy says. The actress in this scene is Shannon Worry. She plays the woman with whom Puddy is flirting. And she was sort of the it girl in the early 90s when it came to like these erotic thriller films. They mentioned that in the notes about nothing too. Like she's kind of this erotic actress, not porn, maybe soft porn. I don't know. But looking at her IMDb, it appears that a lot of those films went straight to video. So I'm sure Kramer would have made himself the premiere. She also did appear in Murphy Brown and Me, Myself, and Irene, amongst other sitcoms at the time. And I think she's fine. I think she plays a flirty woman very well. My take on the scene, I want to mention this is the first time we're seeing Puddy since season 6, the face painter episode. So we've had 2 whole seasons that were Puddyless. So it's such a treat to see him again. Patrick Warburton, I mean, he is just brilliant in this character. I just wanted to say that. Like, what a great decision to bring him back. Also, because these actors are so wonderful and they have a great chemistry, we totally believe this conflict immediately. And we also believe the dysfunction. And we'll see a lot more of in season 9 between the two of them. Puddy will appear in 8 more episodes this season. And this is our first taste of how on again, off again they are with each other, getting back together after a few hours, only because they made each other jealous on the plane. And then the let's make out is a great callback to the face painter episode. It was so funny when he said it then. And there's something about him saying make out. Like, I don't know why. The way it sounds coming out of Puddy's mouth, just extra funny. All right, next we're on the roof. Jerry finds Kramer asleep and wakes him up. Oh no, Kramer says, I think I cooked myself. Stick a fork in me, Jerry. I'm done. Meanwhile, Newman is standing there licking his lips, looking at glistening, buttery Kramer. Next, we're in Jerry's apartment. Kramer enters in his robe. He's all burned. He's like, oh, I'm fried. Well, technically you're sauteed. I don't know if that's accurate. Isn't he roasted, Jerry? Anyway, Jerry asks what he's doing for that. Well, I have to keep my skin moist so I don't dry out. Oh, is that what the doctor said? No, I read an article in Bon Appetit magazine. I love that. Kramer exits as George enters. George takes a whiff. Game hen? Kind of. George now has a real limp on his other leg because he slipped on some butter before a shave. Jerry's like, oh no, not you too. Jerry gets a phone call. It's very upsetting. He's yelling, no, no, no. Thank you. And he hangs up. He tells George that Banya's now added to his network showcase. He's going on right after Jerry. George is like, well, he's got some good jokes. Like what? Ovaltine? Why do dogs drink out of the toilet? Shopping carts with one bad wheel. George is just giggling. That always happens to me. Jerry can't believe it. You think that's funny? George's like, I don't know. I like things you don't have to think too much about. You like Banya's act. You're a closet Banya fan. Maybe I am. Oh, I'm going to puke, Jerry says. Puke. That's funny. Puke. You don't have to think about that. Next, we're on the plane. Elaine and Puddy are holding hands. They're all lovey-dovey. I can't believe we broke up like that. Yeah, it was stupid. They give each other a little smooch. Elaine goes back to reading her book and then notices that Puddy's just sitting there. She asks if he wants something to read. No. Okay. Are you going to take a nap or no? He's just going to sit there staring at the back of the seat? Yeah. Elaine tries to ignore that and go back to her book, but this is irritating her so bad. She slams her book shut. That's it. I can't take this. She says nothing's changed. We've been back together 2 hours and we're still having the same problems we had 12 hours ago. Puddy agrees. I don't know why I ever took you back. Elaine insists that she's the one who took him back. You know it. I know it. Vegetable lasagna here knows it. Please, I don't want to get involved, he says. Elaine's just had it. She hopes that a mountain just rises up out of the ocean and we just ram right into it and end this whole thing. Oh, God. Elaine reclines her seat then, and to the guy behind her, he says, ow! Then she just does it harder. Ow! My take, this is the best scene for Elaine. She's so easily triggered here. I mean, he's just staring. That's all it takes for her to blow up again and break up again. Now, I hate bringing this up because I hate the terminology, but I don't know if you guys have heard this trend called raw dogging it. I mean, it's been a term for a long time for something else. But basically, people are using that term when they travel and they don't bring their phone. I don't know if it's that they don't bring their phone, but they don't look at their phone. They don't read a book. They don't listen to music. They don't watch anything on the screen. They just sit there like Puddy. So it's called raw dogging. It's gross. I hate saying it, but I was just reminded of it during this episode going like, oh, Puddy's doing this like almost 30 years prior to this becoming a TikTok thing. I love Vegetable Lasagna's reaction when she starts up again. He's just so done with her. He just like rolls his eyes. He's like, oh God, here she goes again. And the sheer rage of Elaine here. I mean, she really goes over the top. I mean, basically saying, let's just kill everyone on this plane by crashing into a mountain. I mean, I think this is really just evidence of what a middle seat experience will do to a human after a long time. You just have tolerance for nothing, not even staring, and you want the plane to crash. Oh my gosh. And then the reclining into the guy behind her, that gets me every time. I don't think I watched that without at least chuckling. I just full out laugh. And that brilliant face acting when she's doing it, that look on her face, she's just like, yeah. She's really into it. She doesn't give a shit about this guy behind her. All right, next we're in Kramer's apartment. Kramer is in his hot tub basting himself. He's got sticks of butter floating around. And Newman's there. He's reading the book about cannibalism called Alive. He says to add some more sticks of butter. I got to stay juicy. That smell is just baked on in. Newman gets overwhelmed and says he's got to go. He's got to meet him at the coffee shop. Next, we're at George's office. His boss asks him if something's wrong with his other leg. No, he says it's just the old handicap acting up. But the boss notices, well, it's on the wrong leg. Well, he tries to explain it by looking in the mirror and telling him how he's confused because of the reverse image. The guy's not buying it. He stops George. He's clearly upset about something, and he says he knows what's going on. We cut to the next scene. In Jerry's apartment, we hear a beeping outside of Jerry's door. Jerry opens it, and George is in one of those motorized carts, a rascal, he calls it, because Play Now thinks that he's handicapped in both legs, and this is free of charge to him. Well, at least you know you'll be going to hell no faster than 3 miles an hour. Jerry gets a call from Elaine. It's from the plane phone. Oh, Laney, how's the trip going? Awful, she says. This trip was a huge mistake. Huge! She's just yelling in Puddy's face. Vegetable Lasagna says, please, stop shouting. I can't take it. Who was that? Jerry asks. It was Vegetable Lasagna. Who? Vegetable Lasagna! My name is Magnus. We hear through the phone her telling him to shut up or I'll snap you in half and stuff you in the overhead. Jerry's like, what the hell's happening? He tells her to get him some duty-free Kahlua and hangs up. Oh, how's the trip? Oh, it sounded good. And George tells him he has to motor, but Jerry says, hey, you might want to stop by the showcase tonight. He informs George that he plans to throw his set so that Banya's set is terrible. Let's see how he does out there without all the assistants. George is not on board with this. He says, with all due respect, he tells Jerry that Banya's voice is now the voice of a new generation. My generation. We're 4 months apart. Well, nevertheless, his time has come. And then he needs Jerry's help unwedging his front wheel so he can leave. He beeps at Jerry a few times. Hello, please help me. My take, oh my God, it's just hilarious. Elaine is gone. Like, she's totally unhinged, Elaine. And I'm not complaining. I absolutely love it. Hearing her yell at Vegetable Lasagna through the phone, it's kind of reminiscent of Straight-Armed Sam, right? On Elaine's answering machine, that recording. I don't know. There's something about hearing it through the phone that just makes it so much funnier. Just screeching with anger. And this is Elaine's only interaction with any of the other principal castmates. All right, next we're in Monk's. Newman is sitting at the counter obsessing over butter, Kramer, butter, Kramer. The waitress brings out a whole roasted turkey and we see Kramer's head on it as he waves to Newman. And the wing just goes doot, 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 up and down. Hey, buddy, he says. Newman freaks out and leaves. I remember watching the premiere and just going like, what the hell did I just see? They have Kramer's head on top of a turkey. Oh, it's still funny. Next, we're at the showcase. We're in the kitchen and Kramer comes in and confronts Jerry. He found out from George that he's throwing the set, but Jerry's determined. He's excited to sabotage Banya's set. He takes off his blazer and reveals these rainbow suspenders and he goes on out there. Who's ready to laugh? Then we see Kramer just go into the club and sit at a table. And Jerry is just doing terrible, terrible jokes, but Kramer's laughing really hard. He just wants to support him. One of the terrible jokes, what's the deal with cancer? Some guy from the audience says, I have cancer. Oh, Kramer says, tough crowd. Next, we're on the street. George is motoring down and bumps another one of those little rascals. An old guy comes out and says, hey, you dented my ride. What is that? George says, the 4-volt. I did you a favor. How about I do you a favor upside your head? Oh, yeah, George says. But he gets scared. He runs back onto his rascal and takes off. The old lady in the group says, get the bikes. Now, this old woman is Connie Sawyer, and many of you may recognize her from other things. She appeared in so many films and television. I recognize her from Dumb and Dumber. She's the old lady who Jim Carrey's character says, wow, I guess old people aren't completely useless. And then she ends up stealing all of his stuff. It's great. She's also in The Office. She plays Michael's Nana, which is really funny. Or you could recognize her from literally hundreds of other appearances over an 85-year career. In 2018, she died at the age of 105, and she was the oldest working actress when she died. I thought that was amazing. And just to name a few other shows, Donna Reed, All in the Family, Good Times, Mary Tyler Moore. She was one of the older couples in When Harry Met Sally, the ones that they interview. Oh my gosh, Connie did it all. And in September of 2017, I need to get this. She self-published an autobiography called I Never Wanted to Be a Star and I Wasn't. I love her. She is so charming and funny in everything I've seen her in. Like, she's a scene stealer. She's so good. There's something about that face and her delivery. She's brilliant. And including this appearance. I mean, the delivery of that's all she does. She says, "Get the bikes." It's one line, but it's so memorable. She does such a good job. Connie Sawyer, what a legend. All right, next we're at the showcase. Jerry comes back into the kitchen. We hear just people booing him in the club. Banya's there. Ouch. Kramer comes back and says, "Oh, it was great. What are you talking about? I bombed." Jerry faux apologizes to Kenny. "Sorry about that. I guess you got your work cut out for you." Kenny gets introduced and he goes out all nervous. Newman enters and knocks into Kramer, and Kramer tells him that Jerry could have used his laugh. Goes on and on about how Jerry works so hard, and in the process of this, he knocks over Parmesan and oregano, and it's all sticking to him because of the butter, which only makes Newman hungrier. He hands him some parsley and then bares his teeth. We see Jerry watching Kenny. Oh, the sweet stench of failure. But then Newman and Kramer bust past him into the club. You can hear Kramer saying, "He bit me! Get off of me!" Next, we're on the street. We see the extremely low-speed chase of the rascals, George trying to get away. George then runs out of battery, so he has no choice but to lift it up and start running. But then he runs into his boss, who looks at him. "George, your legs!" George puts down his rascal and says, "Are you a religious man, sir?" "No." And his boss exits. Then we hear, "Eat hickory!" And George gets hit by a cane. Next, we're back at the comedy club. Jerry is celebrating Banya's bad set with some champagne. Kenny comes out. "Did you see it?" "Ouch," Jerry says. Then these two NBC guys come out and they say how much they loved Banya's set. "The two guys running through? I love stuff you don't have to think about," they tell him. They give Kenny a card and say, "We want to be in the Kenny Banya business." And before they leave, one of them tells Jerry to rethink the suspenders. Kind of hacky. And they both exit. "Banya, can't believe it. I guess I'm following you again. First you had a pilot, now me." "Oh," Jerry says, "I'm going to puke." "Puke. That's a funny word," Banya says. "Can I use that?" Then we have a tag to the episode. Elaine and Puddy have arrived. They're on the ground now. They're walking to cabs at the airport. She tells Puddy, "This has been the worst month of my life, and if I never see you again, it'll be too soon." "Ditto," he says. "Oh, that's original. Go to hell." Elaine gets in a cab and tells her address to the cab driver. He says, "Sorry, lady, there's a cab shortage. Everyone has to share." So then Puddy gets in, as well as vegetable lasagna. It's the same setup as the plane. And vegetable lasagna's happy. "Hello." He looks over. "Oh no, I'm sorry." And what can Elaine do except throw her head back and yell, "No!" My take, it's not much to this, just a fun ending with the same setup that we see, the same visual in the cab as the plane. And I have to say, not because I'm good friends with him in real life from that one meeting, but I feel so bad for vegetable lasagna. All right, I'm going to take a quick break and I will see you on the other side. Traveling can be stressful. Crowds at the airport, flight delays, security hassles. But it's even more stressful when your travel partner is a total dumbass. That's why you need Toe Tag Bag by Tumi. Available in 5 sizes, the Toe Tag Bag is the perfect way to dispose of that terrible companion you unwittingly made travel plans with. The childhood friend who asks for A1 in Paris. The girlfriend who never silenced her ringer when jet lag was in full swing. Or that weirdo in a group trip planned by a mutual friend who insisted on taking a selfie in front of every Tokyo McDonald's with an "oh my god" expression. Whatever the travel offense, Tumi doesn't care. We just want to provide you with the perfect receptacle for the body. Made of 100% nylon and secured with a heavy-duty zipper entry, the Toe Tag Bag is as lightweight as it is durable. We also provide a fabric cleaner to get rid of any pesky pools of blood or leaky body parts. You deserve a stress-free vacation, so be sure to pack your Toe Tag Bag just in case you need to commit international murder. The Toe Tag Bag by Tumi, for when you need to whack and pack. And we're back. Just a couple things from the Notes About Nothing I wanted to report. Well, I guess I already did. JLD had to film separately due to her maternity leave. So that was something that I didn't know beforehand. And also, I thought this was hilarious. I wish they kept this in. There was deleted dialogue that revealed that the job George got, his title at Play Now, was Director of Irregular Spheres. So basically footballs. He's the director of Irregular Spheres. Oh, that is brilliant. And now it's time for Greg's Sack Lunch. Greg is our most dedicated contributor, and every week he sends us a sack full of his thoughts. First, his overall thoughts. He says, this is a fun kickoff to the final season. We get George at a new job, handicapped this time, Jerry leading in for Banya, always a great guest star, and Kramer's physical hilariousness with his butter shaving and accidental cooking of himself. We also get a great Elaine story, though too brief in my opinion, reuniting her with Puddy in what was one of my favorite bits of hers in this season. I am so much like Elaine in this episode, getting so easily annoyed while traveling with someone. She doesn't bite her tongue, and I'm here for it. Ultimately, though, I just needed more of it. Totally agree, Greg. And actually, I was planning, I knew going into this, I was like, yeah, I'm definitely going to mention how short this is. It's not long enough. But knowing that they were working around her maternity leave schedule, I totally get it now. So I think they did the most they could do. And I think we get a really solid storyline. I mean, I would dare to say one of the best storylines, even though it's really short and compact because it needed to be. But man, it packs a punch and it's so good. Next in Greg's sack is his favorite scenes and Elaine moments. He says the first scene Elaine even shows up in, she's with Puddy and Oslo in the back of a cab, clearly annoyed already. My favorite line is when Elaine says, I don't want to hear how interesting the change with the hole in it is. I know. And again, like I said, it's so not annoying to like currency, I guess. But look, I guess anything can get annoying. If someone does not shut up about it, no matter what it is, oh my gosh. I mean, clearly he's been doing this in every country, every single day, multiple times a day. So it's just so funny. Yeah, I agree. That is a great line. Next, Greg says, everything on the plane is brilliant. Puddy just staring at the back of a chair on a flight would drive me insane. I love the back and forth and how they give nicknames like vegetable lasagna to people. Totally. And it's just like, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. That's what his in-flight meal was, I guess. He selected vegetable lasagna. And it's like, that's all that sticks. Oh, it's so great. Greg goes on to say, while not an Elaine moment, I remember vividly the first time seeing Kramer through Newman's eyes as the turkey saying, hey, buddy. I was maybe 17. I laughed harder at that than probably anything I've ever seen on TV. I have more to say in my other thoughts about the other non-Elaine moments of this one. Well, like I said, I mean, it was so memorable. It was unlike anything ever. Not only just on Seinfeld, but on TV. You're like, what the hell am I seeing? I can't believe they did that. And yeah, I remember it too, Greg. So I was almost 19 when this came out. So yeah, just a great memory from my late teens. Next in Greg's sack is his scene swap idea. He says, for me, Jerry's stuff with Banya and the network show is the easiest to cut out of this episode. I'd have loved to have seen more of Elaine and Puddy actually on the trip. Their dynamic is arguably the most fun of any of Elaine's relationships, which is probably why they brought him back. I never really liked the Puddy character, but I like what he brings out of Elaine. It's like purely physical attraction coupled with annoyance at his simpleness. Because Elaine does not cross over to any of the other three stories, it would have been at least funny to see her comment on George's faux handicap. They milked the airplane scene for all they could, and I just wanted that expanded upon. Ultimately, great storyline for Elaine, but too limited to just the plane conversations. Well, you know, like I said, we've already explained why, and I think that might change your perspective a little bit, Greg, as to, you know, like now knowing why they needed to do this, and also like I do, because it changed my perspective, but I have a little bit more of appreciation of the greatness that was able to be produced just in those scenes. Oh, it's the funniest part of the episode for me. And I agree with why Elaine likes Puddy. I mean, I think she needs a guy that she can bat around a little bit, but that she's attracted to. She's like, okay, I want to have sex with him, but I don't want, he's not going to be someone that challenges me too much, except my temper, I guess. But yeah, I love it because I think she's conflicted too. Like, oh, I'm so attracted to him, but like, I fucking hate everything else about him. He's so stupid, a real cement head. But to your point, I agree. It's the best dynamic. It's the best relationship, not because he's the best guy for her, but because of what he brings out in her. That's a really good way to put it, Greg. Right. And lastly, in Greg's sack are his other thoughts. He says, every time I'm on one of those really high toilets in real life, I think to myself, I feel like a gargoyle. That line is so perfect. It stuck with me. Also love the montage playing along to Sheena Easton's Morning Train. They used that before with Kramer's bit, and it's the perfect cheesy tune for these moments. Yeah, I love that they bring back that tune because it is. It is really perfect. Apparently, Jeff Schaffer and Alec Berg, they also used it in Eurotrip, which is a movie that they wrote. Was David Mandela writer? He might have been too. Anyway, it was a bunch of Seinfeld writers that wrote Eurotrip, and they used Morning Train on that too. So they clearly love this song. Perched like a gargoyle. Yeah, it is. It's a brilliant line. And I don't think about that when I'm on a high toilet, but I think I'm rarely on a high toilet. Where do you find them? I don't know. Next, Greg says, I also have to again acknowledge how good Michael Richards is at conveying any kind of physical action. When he's writhing, saying, "Stick a fork in me, Jerry, I'm done," I laughed so hard I had to pause the show to allow myself to gain composure. Oh my gosh. I know. I mean, Michael Richards is brilliant. He was put on this earth to do physical comedy, and he just does it with such ease, even though it's not easy. And he talks a lot about in interviews, just how much he injured himself and how much pain he was in a lot of the time. But yeah, I agree. He's so incredibly brilliant. Greg goes on to say, why is the coffee shop serving whole turkeys? Ridiculous, but funny. This show's humor got so broad by this last season, but I can't hate on it because I still laugh. Totally. I mean, like just to compare where this show started to where it ends in terms of the broadness of the comedy, it's planets away from each other, but it still works because we all went along for the ride. So it's one of those things where it's like, oh, you don't really notice like how much weight you're putting on until like you see a picture of yourself like 10 years ago. You're like, holy shit, how did that happen? Because it's like you're there for every pound. So it's like, it just feels natural. It's a natural progression. I don't know if that's a good analogy, but that's what I'm using. Yeah, I agree. I'm still here for it. And it's funny because I have a few friends who only watched Seinfeld in reruns, and they were just like, they didn't kind of experience it in the same way a lot of us did, which was to watch it as it aired. And so when they see the earlier episodes, because I do think they tend to, in syndication, just play the more popular ones, the later seasons, unless I just miss it when they play the really old ones. But anyway, it's so interesting for people like, oh my God, it was terrible. How did it even stay on the air? With Seinfeld, I mean, literally the last season to me is the best season. It's so incredible. They really do go out on a high note, which is what Jerry wanted. Lastly, in Greg's sack, he says, this episode has a tag credit in memory of Brandon Tartikoff. He was the NBC president who originally championed the show and also has credit for saving NBC in the 80s by signing the shows Cheers, The Cosby Show, The Golden Girls, Family Ties, and others. He's also in an episode of Saved by the Bell where he plays himself, stating, "There's no hope with dope." I wrote him a fan letter in the 90s after reading his autobiography, and he wrote me the nicest letter back, which I still have somewhere. If anyone is fascinated by how the TV industry worked back then I highly suggest reading his book. He was a fascinating man. Oh my gosh, Greg, that's so cool. We both have a connection to this episode, you with Brandon Tartikoff and me with vegetable lasagna. No, I love that story. And yes, he was prolific when it came to saving NBC. I mean, the shows you named, Cheers, The Cosby Show, The Golden Girls, Family Ties. I mean, hello. That's all you think about when you think of like the heyday of NBC. That's amazing. I totally remember that episode. I mean, in fact, whenever I see the in memory of Brandon Tartikoff photo, I can see him at Bayside saying that there's no hope with dope. I think I need to do a rewatch of Saved by the Bell. I'm not sure I'll do a podcast about it, but I think I need to rewatch it. I think my kids would find it weird, but probably entertaining. Anyway, back to your comment, which was so great. I love that he wrote you a letter back. That's so amazing. I am totally interested in his book. I did read another book that was super good. It was written by Warren Littlefield, who was also the president of NBC. It's called Top of the Rock, and it is fascinating. It's got excerpts written by many different stars of the NBC shows. It's all about the must-see TV phenomenon that happened. You know, this was with Seinfeld and Friends and Cheers and all that stuff. So that whole must-see TV chunk of time, or era, if you want to call it, that's what Top of the Rock is about. And it's super fascinating. I know like David Schwimmer wrote excerpts for it. Jerry Seinfeld did. I want to say Lisa Kudrow did. Like it's really cool. It's like all these different people's perspectives of what that time was like on, to be on an NBC show. Very, very cool. So yeah, if you're a TV nerd like me and Greg, look up those books. Thank you so much, Greg. It's always so wonderful to get your thoughts. And now it's time to close Greg's sack lunch. Moving on to my favorite Elaine moments, when she's bashing her seat into the guy behind her. It's just the perfect button on that scene after she declares she wants the plane to crash and end this whole thing. And then just the physical comedy of the way she just is pushing that seat back into that guy, and the way the guy's like, ow, it's so stupid, but it gets me every time. And then also hearing her through the phone, this stuff you in the overhead. It's pretty great. It's so good. Something funnier about just hearing it for some reason. My final notes for the episode: super, super fun plot for Elaine to start off the season. I love this reintroduction of Puddy as her dude. It's great. Such a brilliant move, again, to bring him back. I mean, travel-weary Elaine is very entertaining. She doesn't get a lot of real estate in the episode, like we've mentioned a few times now. But again, due to the maternity leave, they had to do what they could. So it's really more about quality than it is quantity. And for me, this is the highest quality plot of the episode. The others are funny as well. I laugh at every single one of them. I always love when Banya comes back. I think what Greg alluded to, maybe Jerry and Banya's storyline could be lifted out. I think it's fine. I like the whole riding on his coattails thing. It's a funny bit. Although, oh my gosh, I forgot to mention this. They did have a deleted scene and they were right to cut it out. It's basically like Jerry at a deli, and it's like, wait, what? Like he's at this deli and it's like, oh, he knows the butcher. Like they're like friends. I'm like, what? Wait, this makes no sense. We've never seen this in Jerry's life. But anyway, he's talking to the butcher and I can't remember what it was, but some cut of meat or some kind of thing at the deli that's really rare and like hard to get. And he's like, oh, Jerry, I got this for you. I'm always going to have it for you and blah, blah, blah. And Jerry's like, thanks. And then he calls the next number and Banya is the next guy. And he's like, oh, Jerry, I'm following you again, but this time at the deli. It's like so overly explained. It's not great. And so anyway, the butcher's like, oh, you're a friend of Jerry's? Well, I'm going to give you some of this stuff too. And so Jerry's like, no. So again, riding the coattails. So they tried to put that in like a deli setting. Not great. Anyway, back to what I was talking about. I do still like this whole Kenny and Jerry plot. But Elaine has the best one, not the most time, but the best plot by far. I think because it's kind of the most grounded, which is ironic since it's on a plane. But this is like Greg was saying, it's the most relatable. We've all been on trips with people we want to strangle. And you're this weird, you're weirdly trapped with these people or person because you're traveling together. It's a very relatable situation for anyone who has traveled with people that annoy them. So great. JLD is so genius. I love when she plays just done with it. She's so good at that. She does that so much in Veep, we get a lot of this rageful persona in Veep, but man, when we get it with Elaine and we see her dysfunction on full display with the on and off with Puddy and what really drives her with him, it's so wonderful. And yeah, just a great start to the season. Couldn't ask for better. And I think that's all I can say about the butter shave. Please do follow Hot and Heavy on social media. On Instagram, it's at Hot Heavy Elaine. On TikTok, it's at Elaine Menace Podcast. And if you'd like to email me, please do at elainepodcast@gmail.com. here we are. We're starting it, the last season. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.